Hey, it's Radrat, and I'm back with some of the worst skateboarding inventions of all time. Skateboarding deserves to be documented, but some of this stuff was better left in the past. Let's get started. Welcome to Radrat Video, where we learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Stuff like trick histories, game reviews, and even tricks themselves on the Shred School. So in my research for all these videos, I've come across a lot of really weird products that have been made for skateboarders throughout the years. For the sake of this video, these gimmicks are just random skate products that don't really do anything useful or were at least way overblown. A very good example of this is my first one, the skate wing. Just look at this thing. Can you imagine carrying this thing around? You have to put it in the back of your truck, drive to a spot, then dump it out, and then you could try to ride it down a hill or something. This thing was an Australian invention. Apparently they made them out of wood, but later had plastic models too. Probably because either the price was too high or because of all the stress cracks. They're really known for those. Finding one without those is pretty tough. It was designed by a yacht racer for some reason. It's 33 inches long and 30 inches wide. Now this thing has skids and even rails on it, like you're going to be doing board slides on it or something. Alright, so the main thing is got these handles on the sides and extra wheels on them. So I guess you could crouch down and just carve really hard so that you tip over and turn. It might be fun for about 10 minutes or so, but you know, that's not the only specialty board out there either. How about this one? The Wheelie Board. So it's got this super long kicktail with a third truck on it, and then of course a little third anti-kicktail at the end of that. What's the point of this? Apparently it's for spinning 360s. They already make special steel wheels for spinning 360s, but at least you could swap those out when you're done. But with this thing, you just have to live with it looking like that. Oh, and you can also do power turns, whatever that means. But the good thing is it comes textured, so you don't need grip tape, which is nice. Next up is bridge bolts. They clip over your deck and they take the place of 2 bolts each, but I have no idea why. It saves you what, like a second each when you set up a board? Apparently, some people also would set them up sideways so that they'd catch your foot when you try to ollie and give you a little more air, but that doesn't seem to be their actual purpose. I just couldn't tell you really what they're for. It just seems like something that would either do nothing or it would get in the way. Also in this picture, by the way, notice that the doubled holes that it has there on the nose, that's an adjustable wheelbase. I wouldn't call that a gimmick because it was kind of helpful for making your board adapt to either street or vert. You could choose one set of holes or the other so that your nose was bigger or smaller. The next thing is lappers, which were actually really popular. You might have heard about them or heard that name before and not really know what it was. Here's the picture. So they're these really weird plastic sliders that cover up the Kingpin and the rest of the hanger there. So the idea is you're doing a lip slide or a disaster, you'll be less likely to hang up on your way back in because that plate will help you slide back into the transition. And I'm sure it would have helped every now and then, but they would encourage bad style because you can just kind of flop onto the coping and just pull it back in. And also they added needless weight to your setup. I saw an interview with a pro from back then, I don't remember who it was anymore, but he said when he stopped using them, he wondered why he ever started in the first place. They were just pointless. But I also have 2 more weird truck add-ons for you. The first one is copers. So they're these plastic covers for the grinding surface of your truck. They had a lot of stuff like this back then, and it was designed to just make your board last longer. But man, one of the most satisfying things about skateboarding is grinding stuff. Just forcing your board along the coping or the concrete and just grinding into it. And it sounds awesome too, but copers ruin all of that. And again, they just add unnecessary weight. So what's the point? The other one is the Z-roller. And it's kind of the same thing as a coper, but it's built into the truck and it's metal. So they're these rollers that would roll along the coping instead of grind. Again, these must have felt horrible, like screeching or rusty grinds. But at the same time these were popular, Grind King invented the inverted Kingpin, which actually would have been helpful, but guess what? They didn't catch on for a long time until Grind King later made their own truck with it built in. But those things are just the start of all the unnecessary protective gear. There were also tail skids, nose guards, and rails, which I get those. The nose guard's a little weird. I don't think it's too crazy. I guess it would help you not chip your nose. But did you know that there's a tail skid for the top of the tail? They were called heel bones by Paul Peralta. The idea was that it would help with your precision, I guess. So you get the steeper tail without that unwanted benefit of actually having some more pop. But you know, I don't think you could actually grip over it, so it seems like it would actually hurt your skating more than it would help it. So I don't get that one. Another protective gear we've got is lace savers. These kind of made sense to a degree, but they just didn't stick around very long. They're not the worst idea in this video here, but shoelaces are pretty cheap. They actually remind me of this product I've talked about before in my new technologies video, which you can watch right here. It's like a sleeve that goes over your shoe. But I think in this case, adding something extra to your shoe and, you know, just making it thicker and make you lose out on board feel, you know, and that was generally not a good thing. But they didn't just try to protect your shoes. You could also protect your fingers. So those awesome 80s fingerless gloves that you probably bought because they were in every issue of Thrasher, they would leave your poor little fingies in danger, so they invented a Rip Grip. This was by Santa Cruz. So these are stickers, but they're really thick and spongy, and you would put them in places on your board that you would grab, and you need a little bit of extra cushion and grip. These were actually hugely popular back in the 80s, and you know, they would come in crazy 80s kind of designs and colors and shapes and all that kind of stuff. But it's just kind of weird to think. So a decent complete back then would have cost you around $100 or maybe a little bit more, which is not too different from today. But once you got to buy a couple packs of Rip Grip, your tail bones, your nose bones, your rib bones, and your heel bones from Powell, the lappers and copers, of course, and then the bridge bolts, you could have doubled that cost. So it's kind of weird, but to be fair, these boards lasted forever. I still see boards like this at antique shops from time to time, and if I ever find a good one, I want to buy it and actually try to skate it and see what it's like. But usually they're either painted over or they're like the off-brand Walmart boards from that time, and they still want like $60 from them. But the point is, they're still standing. These boards could really take a beating. Okay, there's a couple more left for you. First is single bearing wheels, and these came out around the early 90s, I believe. So on paper, they kind of seem like a good idea. So you use half the amount of bearings that you normally use, right? But in practice, they really didn't work all that well. Apparently the bearing would pop out really easily, which kind of makes sense. So there's just the bearing and then a spacer, and it doesn't really seem to lock it in place that well. Plus, the single bearing is taking the stress and force that usually both bearings would take. So if you think about doing a blunt slide, okay, so you'd pop in, you would lam, the wheels would lock, and then your board would hit it. So it would hit the nut and the truck, then force the wheels to start sliding. And that would put a lot of stress directly on the bearing. But when you only have one bearing with a spacer in it, it's really no surprise that they didn't work out because they would just pop out. Next one is sky hooks. So I'm sure everyone has tried something similar to this concept before when they first started skating. These are devices that would attach to your nose and tail, and they would lock your feet onto the board, like snowboard bindings. Then you could jump around and the board would stay with you. It's fun to do when you first start by either tying your shoes down with shoelaces or duct taping them or something like that. But this is an actual product that you would buy and you would install and you would use it permanently. It's really weird. It seems like they either came out in the 80s or they were at least popular in the 80s, which is weird because vert ollies and flat ground ollies had already been invented. So this picture looks like it's from the 70s. So I'm not entirely sure exactly when they came out, but they at least lasted into the 80s. Weirdly, these have caught on with longboarding, at least a little bit these days. And when you search for pictures of it, you mostly find longboards. It seems like a lot of people are using them. So maybe they help your feet stay locked in when you're rolling over rough surfaces, or maybe they really help with power slides, just keeping your foot really locked in there. Not entirely sure. If you are using sky hooks on your board these days, or even back then, let me know about your experience in the comments. Lastly, and worstly, is these. So there are scooters, which are bad enough as it is, but they're at least their own thing. You can turn the handlebars and the wheel turns and you can carve around, I guess. But this is a way to attach handlebars to a regular skateboard. You couldn't turn with them, so they do absolutely nothing helpful except make it impossible to do any kind of trick whatsoever. Like, there's nothing you can do on it. You can't even do like bar spins. It's locked in place. And I'll never understand these. Is skateboarding really so hard that you need to lean on something while you're doing it? You know, it's ridiculous. And the worst part is that you would see ads for these in legitimate skateboard magazines back in the day. It's kind of embarrassing. But believe it or not, these actually still exist. There's a brand called Cali Bars that is still making skateboard handlebars. Supposedly they're for helping little kids learn how to skate, and they kind of take the high ground on their site, saying that it's at least a skateboard and not a scooter. You know, as long as it's for 4-year-olds, it's not the worst thing in the world, but otherwise, just come on. All right, so those are the things that I found this time. Let me know what I missed in the comments. I know I just barely scratched the surface on all that crap that used to be in the back pages of Trans World. So let me know what you want to see in the next version of this video. Also, let me know if you've ever used any of this stuff too. I really want to know, especially with the bridge bolts. I just don't get them. If you had them back then, tell me what they were for. I really want to know. But until next time, here are some more videos I made recently that you might like. So check those out. And also don't forget to subscribe so you can learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week. Thanks for watching.